reconnect, live, laugh, and love. Connections, dreams, getaway experiences. Brave Heart Workshops. Unique Getaways live with Jill Reynolds.
The Connection Show. Restore, renew, and reconnect in community. Sponsored by Brave Heart Workshops live. I'm Jill Reynolds, and joining me today is Daralyse Lyons from the Philadelphia area. Welcome, Daralyse.
Thank you so much for having me, Jill. It's really great to be here.
Well, I'm so grateful that you could join us, and I'd love the audience to know just a little bit about you. So, in second grade, Daralyse was sent to the principal's office for misbehaving. When she arrived, instead of going in to see the principal and accept her punishment, she lied about having a stomachache and needing to see the nurse. She's been telling stories and putting on performances ever since. Daralyse is I'm going to hopefully say this right, a summa cum laude graduate of New York University with a bachelor's in arts and science. A true overachiever, she double majored in English Lit and religious studies and minored in history. Daralyse is first and foremost a writer. She's written nonfiction books about yoga and 2 children's books. Her work has been read by over 1 million readers. She's a certified yoga teacher and an emotional freedom technique, which is also an abbreviation for EFT, practitioner, who after overcoming an eating disorder and other self-destructive patterns of behaviors, uses her own healing as a springboard for helping others. Daralyse's interest and expertise has evolved over the years, and she has become an avid speaker and transformational life coach, helping people to discover the stories that drive them. So what an amazing bio. So cool.
Yeah, thank you. And I feel really, really lucky to be able to get to do the things that I love and make a difference in people's lives. It's such meaningful work, you know?
Well, I'd love to transition and learn about you, but before we do, I want to just share, because after reading that, there's been, with the social distancing and the COVID, there's been this one Facebook page where you can go and different leaders and people could do their own expertise on this page and share it for parents that have had their children at home. So I volunteered and started doing story time with Grandma Jill and reading storybooks to the children. And so when you have your storybooks, I'll have to turn you on to that. You can do story time with Daralyse.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, you know, usually I do that when it's not COVID. I go and I read to kids and various speaking opportunities and things. And it is so amazing, those little people, you know, and their minds and the questions that they ask, and just their eagerness to learn and their receptivity. Like, it's so meaningful. It's so meaningful.
Well, I'll have to definitely get your children's books, because I have 13 grandkids. So definitely do that. But I'd like to transition and start with that little, and I was cracking up laughing for the opening, because I can't tell you in high school how many times I was in the principal's office, but that's a different story. So let's take you back, that little girl in second grade, and how she began just having a passion for performing.
Yeah, so you know, I don't actually remember a time when I wasn't telling stories or making things up or creative in some way. And I can remember clear as day, I think I was maybe about like 3 or 4 years old or something, and I'd been maybe I was 5, because I have to have been old enough to read, and I think I started reading at 4 or 5, and I had stayed up really late under the covers with my flashlight, you know, reading and just soaking in other people's stories. And then at breakfast the next day, I fell asleep, like did a face plant in my Cheerios, because I've been up so late just reading, you know. And so I feel like my whole life I have been driven by stories, very interested in creativity and forms of expression. And even, now I do a lot of work as a journalist. And one of the most meaningful things that I do is I get to sit with someone and I get to listen to their story and bear witness. And what human beings are capable of going through and living through is so, it's really spellbinding for me to just be able to learn. And I guess the last thing I'll say about that is that for many, many years, I wrote fiction, exclusively fiction. I would just, I wanted to make things up. And I think it ties back to the principal story that you read at the beginning of the bio. But lately, more and more, I've been driven to real life stories and people's actual experiences because, it's cliche, but the truth is so much better than fiction. People have so many incredible things that they've lived through.
Well, it's funny you say that because if it came to my home, you'd crack up. My bedroom has a bookshelf with about, I want to say 200 books. And I love books, but what's so funny, Daralyse? I have ADD severely, and I can read one chapter of a book and have no idea what I read. So then I go and start to read it again, have no idea. So every single book on my bookshelf, I've never completed. I think maybe 3 books on my whole bookshelf, but I buy them with the intention that I'm going to read them. And the only ones that seem to draw me in are nonfictions. I love Netflix nonfiction movies. I love them.
Yeah, well, because I think there's a way that that one of the themes of this show is connection, right? And that's something that you emphasize and you talk about. And I think that even if you're reading the work of someone or someone's story, like their memoir or something, and you've never met that person, it does give us a sense that we're connecting with another human being. And I think most people have a soul hunger for that experience, right? Like that sense of sharing deeply and vulnerably of ourselves and also receiving someone else as they are. And so, yeah, it makes total sense to me that it would be a little easier to pay attention and focus in when you're focusing in on the lived experience of another human being.
Yeah. So let's go back to you. So you're this little girl, and I'll just share one other tidbit with you to go into your story. So me as a little girl, I too love to perform in my garage, and my sister and I used to sell tickets for a nickel to the kids in the neighborhood and put on little shows, with our umbrella. And I still remember, nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina in the morning, and we'd dance and we'd sing. Well, a funny story was my grandma, and I don't know your age, I'm 66. My grandma, back when I'm, so this is in the 50s, took me and my sister to go see the movie by Judy Garland, Gypsy Rose Lee. And Gypsy Rose Lee was a stripper. And that was the whole movie, was and her song was, "Let me entertain you, let me make you smile. We could have a good time, a really, really good time." And I'm a little girl watching this, and just, as an innocent little girl, thought it was the coolest thing. Oh, I could do that. So I come home from the show, and I go out in the garage and start having the kids come over, and I'm doing a striptease, and my mom comes out and goes, "What are you doing?" And I got grounded, and I'm like, "I'm just being Judy Garland."
Oh my God, I blame your grandmother.
I know. It was so funny. It was so funny. But I had to share that because of you saying you were performing, just like how as children we're so innocent and pure, and how we just like to repeat what we see.
Oh my gosh, totally. And that's why they tell you, parents and stuff, that don't just think about what you tell your kids, but think about what you show and exhibit. It's goodness gracious.
Anyway, enough of my story. So go back now. So you're this little girl and you're performing and you're enjoying writing. And so tell me a little bit how your journey in life went, because you ended up with the eating disorder and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really started off from this place. It's interesting, right? Because I'm in recovery, or recovered, however you want to kind of frame it. And I do believe that for me, there was a part of recovering a self that was lost. So the person I was early on in life, I was fun and I was dynamic and I was fit, I like just loved life and I love stories and I love people. And like, I was I was like a precocious little kid too. So I always had all these opinions and like, I would tell you my opinions. I was very alive as a child. And then, for various reasons, I feel like my spirit kind of got squashed, which happens to a lot of people. They go through trauma or loss or, various things. And I suffered a series of losses as a child, like the death of my favorite aunt and my stepdad coming into our lives. And he was very like emotionally abusive and toxic and just, sexual abuse as a child. So I experienced like a lot of things that I think really taught me that it wasn't okay to be me and it wasn't safe to express myself. And I have a lot to express, right? And so it just made sense that at a certain point when I knew that there was no safe way to like let out my feelings and my emotions and be the person I wanted to be in the world, I started to stuff that. Like I started to stuff it with food. And then, I was bulimic. So I would kind of like push my emotions down and, throw them up, or I would starve myself and various things. And, it like gave me a false sense of control over my feelings and myself, but it also really stole my capacity to be my true, authentic, fun, exciting, like weird, big kind of self. And so as I got healthier and as I got into recovery, it was like all these parts of myself that I thought were lost or I thought I had lost touch with just started to come back and back in my life. And I felt like all the dramas that I'd been playing out for years and years of self-abuse and stuffing down my feelings, like I needed ways to express. And so I found that in writing and acting, and I do comedy improv and like yoga. Like I'm a very, I'm sitting here. If we were actually in studio, like I'm a very big gesturer. And so to be able to like, I couldn't actually be in recovery if I didn't have ways of expressing myself and feeding my soul and my spirit. And as I got into recovery, those things came back.
Well, I'm giggling because, and we'll talk more because I'm just like, oh, I'm so glad I met you. It's like I'm just sitting here going, oh, I'm so glad. So, I'll tell at the end that I had this epiphany to start this connection show a few weeks ago. And so we meet on Monday nights now, every Monday night. And the first night, everyone introduced themselves and like, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And the second week, there were different people that were jumping on the Zoom Connect. And, what do you do? So about 10 minutes into what do you do? I'm like, I don't care what you do. Let's play some improv. So I did improv and had everyone hysterical. And I learned improv, Daralyse, when I was in treatment for my eating disorder in 2012 or 13 in St. Louis at Castlewood. And there was a primary therapist there. Her name is Dr. Laura Wood. And she's got a company called Recovery Through Performance. And she's written about 6 plays in New York. And she was our drama therapist. And she taught twice a week drama therapy and improv. And so that's how Braveheart Workshops got started. Is when I got out of treatment, I reached out to Laura and asked her if she would do my retreats. And so we've done 7 Braveheart Workshops with drama therapy, burden release. We have healed over 80 people, which would normally take about 5 years of intensive therapy every week. In 1 weekend, they've been totally healed from eating disorder, sexual abuse. And at our retreats, we do improv too. And they're amazing. They're just amazing. So I'm right there with your girlfriend. I love improv. I love playing. So, yeah.
Well, and not to digress too much, but the idea of play, like we lose that as adults. I think most people lose the capacity or the permission or whatever it is. Like we just think we're not allowed to play. And it's such an important skill set. They've done studies that demonstrate that I think it's something like 80% of people who are currently in prison like didn't get to play as children, right? Like there's something important and foundational about being able to like not take ourselves so seriously. And also, yeah, there are some things that definitely need to be taken seriously, definitely. But I don't know, having that wide emotional range, I think it's important, and it makes it, at least for me, but I know for a lot of people, it makes me less likely to turn to self-destructive ways of being, right? Because I think like when people are chasing a high or chasing a low, like it's often because they don't experience emotional gradations in their life. And so the more we can let ourselves like have fun and also cry and like feel, the less, it seems counterintuitive, but the more you can feel like safely and with joy and with purpose, the less likely you are to want to numb.
Yeah.
So,
How did you do, if I can ask you, did you do your eating disorder recovery? Did you go to treatment?
yeah. I'm laughing because I should be dead or in an institution somewhere, right? Like so I was in 18 different inpatient eating disorder treatments. And I'm talking about like long-term, anywhere from a period of like 2 weeks to I think the longest stay I had was a 9-month stint at treatment. And so yeah, I mean, I spent much of my teens and 20s just in and out of a revolving door treatment system. I'm 36 now. You had like referenced age, and yeah, I'm 36, and I have not been in a treatment facility now in 10 years. Like, so that's a miracle. Yeah.
Wow, praise. What was, and I'm just starting to know this, and you guys, if you're not a person with an eating disorder, it's hard to understand this, but I went to treatment 5 times too. I started at it was back in those days, it was Rosecrans in California. Then I ended up at Rosewood Ranch in Arizona, Wickenburg. And the saying is, where the F is Wickenburg. And then I went to Castlewood in St. Louis. And then I was at ERC, Eating Recovering Center, Chicago. And then I was at Aloria in Milwaukee. And so curiosity, and I don't know if you've been to any of those. I'd like to know if you have. But of that, what was the final thing that you felt got you to a place of really wanting and being in recovery?
Yeah, I want to say the final thing for me was relapsing after my 18th inpatient treatment. Like I was just like, oh my God, I had lost everything. I gave up a really high powered job and career and like lost money. And I thought I had hit bottom, and I got out of treatment and I relapsed again. And I was like, it's all on me. Like I can't go back somewhere for help because I've done that, right? Like, and I think there was just a moment when I just had this realization, like either I'm gonna get better or I'm just gonna die of this disease. Like, and I just knew that. And I remember calling my mom, and I'm so grateful for her because I had been doing, you mentioned yoga retreats, and like I'd been doing yoga and I'd learned EFT, but these were all kind of things that I like tangentially knew about. And I called my mom and I just said, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know. I'm so broken and I'm like, hurting myself every day and I can't stop. And she was just like, Dara, you have all these tools and all these skills, like use them. And I remember it was on a day when I had just been binging and purging like half the day. And that was my thing. Like if I started there's a slogan in recovery that says one day at a time. And like because I have a very intense personality, I took that to be very literal. Like, okay, well, if I messed up today, like the whole day is going to be bad, right? Like I'm just going to like let this day just be the worst day of my life, And so I remember I was surrounded I was in my apartment. It was surrounded by binge food. Like I was just stuck in this pattern, and I unrolled my yoga mat and I started to do some yoga, and I started to like really get to some of the core reasons, like ask myself as I was breathing and as I was feeling my body, like, why am I doing this? Why am I so intent on hurting myself? Like, what are the feelings? What's going on? And I remember like just having this light bulb epiphany moment. And then I sat down on my yoga mat and I started doing EFT, which is the emotional freedom technique, which is the tapping technique. And I started doing that. And it was amazing because something in me, like I felt it was almost like a light switch turned on or something turned off. It was like this incredible in the moment shift. And I just looked around at all my binge food and I just thought, I don't want to binge and purge anymore. Like I just don't.
And so because I'm the
Yeah.
connection show, and because I'm the connection show, I'm all about connecting the dots. I'm all about it. So what was that light bulb? What was that word?
Yeah,
What was the word?
So it was I like the feeling that I was trying to run from was fear, but not just like regular, it was like a panic, like a soul level panic. Like if I don't do this, I'm gonna die or something. And I remember I traced it back when I was 8 years old. I used to have seizures. I had epilepsy as a child, and I had it like luckily I had, I think, a series of 3 seizures, and then I've never had another one, and I'm fine and all of that. But just that like panic as a child and feeling like you can't trust your own, I felt like I couldn't trust my own body. Like I felt like it wasn't safe to be me. And right at that same point, my aunt had died of leukemia. So it was like, I had all this stuff around like death and dying and feeling out of control about, the body. And this, Jill, was a really interesting realization because I've been in so many different treatment centers and I've been to therapy and I've like processed my feelings and I journaled about, I've done a million things and I'd never like traced my eating disorder, the inception of my eating disorder back to that moment. But I did that day on the mat and I did the EFT and I did yoga and like, I just didn't want to binge and purge it. Like I just didn't want to. And I kept expecting that the urge was going to come back. And it didn't. And it didn't for, I think, a period of like 2 years. And then full disclosure, because I'm a really honest and transparent person, I did have, I developed celiac disease maybe 2 years into my eating disorder recovery. And I might have had it before then, but I just had like really bad symptoms. And so there was all this stuff at that point around like food and diet and like rigidity around eating. And so I did have like a brief relapse then. And then I went through like a really bad breakup and I had maybe a couple days or a week-long relapse then. But essentially like that moment on the mat was the moment that there was a shift that happened in me where I didn't want to die anymore. And up until that point, I think I'd been pretty ambivalent about life, but like in that moment, I wanted to live more than I wanted to die. And that's been a constant for me ever since. And so, yeah, like it was just an amazing accumulation of things that led me to be there in that moment and to be willing to really like change, and
I'm so glad you were so transparent to share that because there's 2 things I think from what you do with the EFT and with the being an author. There's 2 things that for the audience of what Dara's shared with us today of connecting these dots, why it's so imperative, and then being a writer. I connected my dot too. My dot was, and I'm recovered from, when I was younger, I was more like really total anorexic from sexual abuse. And then later on became really full blown into restrictive avoidance disorder and then binge eating. But I connected my dots because we were very abused as children, lock-key children, locked out of the house for hours at a time with no food and no bathroom privileges. And so starting at like 5 years old, we had no parent at home. So I had to learn how to make my own food, my sister and brother and I. And so we would eat our meals in front of the TV. So my TV became my babysitter. And so I went throughout my life that when I would eat, I would always eat my meals in front of TV and numb out because numbing out in front of the TV. And so my binge would begin right when I'd sit down and watch TV, and I'd get up and get one bite of food, and then 10 minutes later go get something else, and 10 minutes later my husband's sitting there going, there's no way you can be hungry. And I wanted to take a machete and go, yes I am, because it was my babysitter, and my fear of being alone, I needed food to calm me down. And so I don't struggle with binge eating now, but I still struggle at night when I watch TV, wanting like white knuckling it and wanting sometimes to go get something to eat. I'm watching TV and I'm like, no, I'm okay. Tap, tap, I'm okay. I can sit here and watch a movie without needing food. But it's just that connection of TV, aloneness. And my husband and I have recliners right next to each other. So it's like, he's right there. I can ground myself. But anyway, it's just amazing how connecting the dots really, really makes sense. And then the second one I wanted to share real quick, and then have you talk back again, is I had the privilege of meeting Dan Allender, and he's an amazing man. He owns the Seattle School of Theology in Seattle, Washington. And he's an author, speaker, and, therapist. And he has a philosophy. He's written the book, Healing the Wounded Heart, the Wounded Heart, and then Healing the Wounded Heart. And he has sexual abuse healing things all over the country. So I was in one of his longest standing Healing the Wounded Heart sexual abuse groups in Chicago for 2 years. And my leader is a leader. She's written in his book. She wrote like one chapter in his book on the brain. And his theory is that we've all had trauma in our life. We've got big T trauma and some small t traumas in our lives. And a small t trauma could be you're dating someone, you break up, and it's your first Christmas without that boyfriend, and you're depressed, you're sad, and it's a small t for you. So he said his philosophy of healing, and you're being an author, you'll love it, is that we should take different T stories in our lives, and in about 1,000 words, maybe 1,500 most, very, very descriptively write that story. Very descriptively. And I had never done this on my date rape. And so I chose to do this in my sexual abuse group. And I had shared my date rape for years in therapy, but never like really getting it out of my body. And I wrote my descriptive date rape and shared it in my sexual abuse group and was bawling. And then I did my drama therapy weekend with Dr. Laura Wood, and somatically she had me relive the date rape with a man in the room play my date rapist and her pushing me down like the rape and me getting the rape out of my body somatically. It was so powerful, and I finally had the courage to put my date rape on my website. So if you guys are listening, you can read it. So I finally posted it, and it's just not in me anymore. So yeah, you as an author, I just wanted to share that because it's so profound, Dara, to do it. And he calls it, his terminology is getting out of the helicopter and landing the plane. Instead of telling your story to helicopter view, an unemotional view, helicopter, land that gosh darn plane.
Well, yeah, I mean, and there's so much in what you said. I think a huge part of when someone's experienced trauma is like dissociation, right? Like you leave your body, you go somewhere else, you're not like in your body. And so a huge part of healing, I think, is to like metabolize some of the things that have happened, right? And I'm using that as like a very intentional metaphor as someone who hasn't had an eating disorder, and you as well, had an eating disorder. And so it's like, can we digest, assimilate, and then eliminate these experiences so that like you can be free to live without storing this? Like, I think we're just sponges sometimes for our experiences, and we walk around like waterlogged from all the things. And it's like, when you can really just wring it out, there's so much healing on the other side of that. And I love that he had you write about things specifically. I know that for me in my work individually and then with other people, like I'm always trying to get them to like have a catharsis, right? Like, because it's so meaningful if you can cry, if you can scream, if you can write, if you can get it out of you. Life is so much better. Life is so much better on the other side. But I think it can be challenging because sometimes people just don't want to navigate through. They want to go around, they want to go, and my experience is that that's not effective. You have to confront it and then release it in some
Well,
way.
18 times in treatment, you're like me. We're resilient women. We are resilient. We never give up, because you would, if you were someone to give up, you wouldn't have gone back 18 times to try to get it right. So kudos to you. So I'm not familiar with your writing, so tell us about your children's, what you've written, what it's called. We'd like to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've written, so far I've published 20 books.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, it's great. Like I'm able to do writing full time primarily. So I've written, like my most recent book to come out, my most recent adult literary fiction book, is a novel called Yoga Cocaine. And that's about how a woman named Jessica is a cocaine addict, and she uses yoga as a mode of recovery. And so that, like, I'm really excited about that. It's definitely not autobiographical, but there are elements of me that are in the story. And so that's, one of my most recent books. But if people go on my website, DaralyseLyons.com, they can find like all the things that I've written. And then I've written my children's books under a pseudonym because, the themes I deal with for adults are a little bit heavier, right, than the themes I deal with for kids. And one of those books, I've published 2 now. I'm in the process of publishing a third, but the 2 books are really, geared towards helping kids who might be dealing with some sort of struggle or, in a very empowering way. So I wrote one book called Celia and the Glue Man, about a little girl who has celiac disease, and how she starts to feel like there's a monster inside of her, and then how she starts to really realize that like community and connection is more important than food. And so that's one book. And then I wrote another book called I'm Mixed, about being biracial and being proud of that, because I am biracial, and I think there's not a ton of literature for kids out there that's like empowering. And yeah, so I write my kids' books under the name Maggie Williams, and then I write my adult literary fiction and my journalism and my nonfiction stuff under my actual name, which is Daralyse Lyons.
Wow, I'm just so happy to meet you. You can't even begin. And it's so funny, Daralyse, because for the audience to know, when I started to do these live interviews just a couple weeks ago, I'm on so many Facebook and social media sites, and I might like just be flipping through a page or a group, and I'll see a name and just like look at their profile and say, oh, I'm going to ask them. And I've had like, I think you're about close to my 25th or close to 30 interviews now in the last month and a half. And I always believe that God brings me to the right person, because there's millions of people on social media. So how I found you, I don't even know, but it was God inspired, and I'm just blessed to know you. It's just amazing. So as your full-time job now that pays your bills and keeps you fed, is it your writings? I heard you mention that you're into journalism. Do you work at an outside company too, or are you able to have your entire day spent with writing your own stuff?
Yeah, so my entire day is spent writing my own stuff, doing my own, so I have some private yoga clients that I do individual work with. It's been a long time since I've taught yoga classes. I loved that, but at a certain point when my career started to take off, I just didn't have the bandwidth for that anymore. So I have some private yoga clients. I also have some private coaching clients. But when I'm not doing that work, all my other time is spent working on writing, whether it be a book or a journalistic project that I'm doing freelance for one of the, organizations that I have the pleasure of writing for. Or like right now, I'm in the midst of a big journalistic initiative. It's a big podcast project about diversity and like racial justice. And so I get to, I really get to be creative. I want to say like 90% of the time in my work life. And it's awesome. It's great. I never thought that I would be here.
That's amazing. So how have you connected during this social distancing time? How has that looked different in your life this time?
Yeah, it's looked really, really different. I am so grateful that I mentioned this diversity project that I'm working on, and so I've been doing a lot of interviewing with people, even though we can't get together in person, right? Like I am able to talk to them about their stories, whether it be on Zoom or on the phone, and that is really enriching for me to be able to like really connect on a deep, deep level and talk about things unrelated to COVID, and unrelated because I mean, I'm like it's really beautiful to be able to talk to people. And some of the topics that I'm dealing with, right, whether it's like Jewish generational trauma in the aftermath of the Holocaust, or LGBTQIA identity issues, or the Lives Matter movement, or whatever. Like some of these are heavy topics, but they're not COVID topics, and so that feels really nice that I get a break from that. And then also, I have like wonderful friends that I love and I talk to, and so I haven't like interacted with people a lot. Like I'm hug deprived, but I'm not conversationally at a deficit. I'm connecting with people. And then one of the hugest ways that I connect with myself, Jill, is through the creative process. And so, I'm not able to like go do improv or go out and like meet people the way that I normally would, but I am able to sit and write and read and connect deeply with stories. And so emphasizing, I'm pragmatic. So I always kind of look at like, well, what is available to me and what's not. And then I make choices in the arenas that are available to me. So I mean, COVID has been a devastating time in terms of what it's doing in the world and what it's doing to just the lives of people and the economic situations of many, many people. But I am very fortunate in that, like for me, in terms of my livelihood and in terms of my ability to create, it hasn't hindered that in any way.
That's good. And how about we're already, I can't even believe, Dara, we're already halfway through the year. So for the remainder of 2020, what's your remaining dreams for 2020?
Yeah, so I'm really on a work level, I'm really, really passionate about releasing this podcast that I'm working on. And so I'm hoping that will happen in like July or August. So that's a big like work dream for me. And it's not even a dream because it's a reality, it's an inevitability, right? Like I'm just working to make that happen. But I would say on a personal level, like my dating life, I'm a bit of a workaholic. And so I had taken a step back from dating and all of that for a while. And like, especially when COVID hit, I just realized like, oh, I actually like really want to share my life with someone. So that's something that I'm hoping to like, get back out there when life permits and really focus some energy on having a more balanced existence and not just like working and producing in the world. So I would say those two things are really like at the forefront. And then, there's just the other thing of like, I want to just see my family and hug them. And, so yeah, I would say those three things are the things I'm most looking forward to and most like invested in after we get out of lockdown.
Well, they say that half of the way to be able to get dating is just to make yourself known. So everyone, she's ready to date. Do you have a preference of who you want to date so they know this?
Oh my goodness! Right. Well,
we got to let the audience know.
Get myself into too much trouble on social media. So, but yeah, I would just say that that's something that I am.
She wants to date. Okay.
Yes, but I want to date.
That's funny. Getaway experience. When you can do a getaway experience, what would it look like?
Yeah. Oh gosh, and I love travel. Like I love travel, and I was supposed to go to Italy this year for this really awesome writing retreat, and I was so excited about it. And that, I mean, other people have bigger problems, but I definitely felt like I would have wanted to do that. So I would say I really do want to go to Europe and do something amazing in that vein, like maybe Italy or Spain. And I've been to both before, but like I want to go again and like be there. And so those would be, I guess, like my more grandiose travel plans, but just on a more basic level, like next month or something. My family lives in Connecticut, and I have not seen them I've seen them on Zoom, but I haven't been with them. So I would say my first order of business travel wise will be going to Connecticut and like wrapping my arms around my mom and my sister. And then, like maybe at the end of this year, maybe next year, going to Europe or, somewhere more exciting than Connecticut. But I'm more about people than places. So like I want to start with the people and then, worry about the places.
That's awesome. So if someone told you you had to delete all your apps on your cell phone, but you only could keep 2, what are your 2 must-haves?
Do I have to keep 2? Like, I would be so excited if I got to delete apps on my phone.
No, we're gonna make you keep 2 because you gotta connect somewhere.
Right, that's true. Yeah. I know I'm big on the phone. All right, so I would say then that the apps that I would keep would probably be WhatsApp, because I do have some friends who are like overseas, and so being able to speak with them, I really value that. So I would keep WhatsApp. And then I'm a big podcast listener, so I would also keep the podcast app on my phone so I can, those would be my 2.
Okay. And what's one fun fact about you? We've already said a lot, but what's one fun fact?
Okay, so I think a fun fact is that I'm afraid of heights, like very afraid of heights, but not if I'm going fast. So I'm afraid of the Ferris wheel, but I love roller coasters. I will go anywhere to ride a roller coaster. I love them. I've been skydiving. Like I love parasailing. So I have a hunger for like intensity and height, but if I'm slow and high up, I can't do it. So like I'm petrified of Ferris wheels and probably would not go on one, but I will go on any roller coaster.
How about bungee jumping? Is that too slow? Because you got to think about it.
No. So if not for the neck recoil, I would absolutely go bungee jumping, anytime. But I'm a little worried. I think they have the bungee jumping, right, where you can it's a harness and you can go down without the snap. I would do that, but how
about zip lines? Would you do a zip line?
Oh, I love zip lining. Yeah, I've been on zip. Oh, I love that. Yeah. So maybe I want to amend my travel destination and go somewhere where there's a zip line and
Well, you know where you're coming, don't you? You're coming to my house in Branson. We've got at least 5 zip lines here.
No way.
Oh yeah, Branson is there's every kind of amusement park, there are Ferris wheels here, forget that one. And I'm right across the street from Silver Dollar City, and they got amazing roller coasters. So you'd have a blast here.
Yeah, I would. Yes. And apparently you're not really social. You don't have to.
Oh no, you can come now. And I have 2 spare bedrooms. You have your own great room, and it's free. And all you got to do is just get here, and we'll have a blast together. So I'm going to put your bio on the screen so the audience can see how to connect with you. This will be attached to my YouTube channel, so you'll be able to jot this down and connect with Dara and get her books and get to know her a lot better. So I am so glad you came onto the show, and I mean that. You have carte blanche anytime you want to come to Branson. I live in a really nice community right on the second hole of a golf course. It's so peaceful. You could sit outside and write all day, and just gorgeous. It's beautiful here. We are 10 minutes away from Table Rock Lake, which is stunning. You can go by the lake and take your lawn chair and go right. And then we can play.
You really do espouse the values that you talk about, Jill. Like you really are a person who's about connection and love, and I'm just so inspired by that, and thank you so much. And I might just take you up on it.
plus I'm a water aerobics teacher, so I can kickbox in the water like you can't believe, so we could have a really fun time in the water.
Love it.
So thank you so much. And for those of you who've been watching us today, I just again want to remind you that the Connection Show does look for amazing leaders just like Daralyse. And so if you'd like to be on the show, please go to braveheartworkshops.com, go to my contact page, and reach out to me so we can schedule a time for you. For you that are the audience who have enjoyed the show, we would love to connect with you. So we have started the Connection Show Gathering Tribe. It's a private group on my Facebook page, which I'll post. You must go to the page and join it with your email to be invited in to get the password to come on the show. We meet every Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, and 5 Pacific Time. If Daralyse is ever free, I'm hoping she'll join us so she can lead us in some improv. We can do story time. We can do some EFT. So the nice part about our connection group is we're spontaneous. And so you never know what to expect. We had one week which it was really heavy, where we were talking about the racial divide and just the anxiety and stress. And then the next week we played like a family game, and then another week we did improv. So join us every Monday night, and Dara, if you can jump on, I would love to have you.
I'd love to come. That sounds really fun.
Oh, it is.
And very, very very important and very connected.
Yes.
Really great.
So thanks so much, and you guys all have a wonderful day. Signing off from the Connection Show. Bye now.
Let's connect now. We can dream together to renew, restore, and reconnect with wellness in our life. Go to braveheartworkshops.com. Join me for weekly Zoom connections on Facebook at facebook.com/Braveheart Workshops. Thanks so much for joining the show, and we look forward to seeing you